Good morning, Facebook world. Welcome to our Facebook Live on Friday morning. How is everybody doing this morning? Fall is definitely here in our neck of the woods. It's cold and rainy this morning, so we had a short walk, and hopefully it'll stop raining for us so we can get a longer walk in, or the children get restless. So today's topic is going to be help my puppy is a teenager, how to use the ODR game to help your adolescent dog thrive. So while we wait for people to join us, I would love to hear from you. Say hello, let me know where you are from, and let me know what kind of dog you have and why you chose this breed. We all have stories on why we got the breeds we started with or we eventually moved to. We knew a dog of that breed or we saw it in a movie. Sometimes they're just odd little reasons, and sometimes there's a big story behind it. My first breed was Akita. I got my first Akita in 1995. His name was Yukon. He was awesome, especially awesome for a person who knew nothing. And this was her very first dog. I didn't even have dogs when I was a kid. It was quite the transition, but he was a lovely dog. There was no big reason why I chose Akitas. I'd always wanted a German Shepherd. I'd spent some time with some German Shepherds that I really liked. And I went to puppy class with a friend of mine, and there was two Akitas in the class, and I fell in love with them. The big fuzzy head just called my name, and I got Akitas. Um, if you don't know me, my name is Paula Hoger, and I've been a dog trainer operating in the Ottawa area since 1998. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to learn from a number of dog training greats. I'm constantly changing and evolving my methods to give my dogs and my clients' dogs the clearest information to achieve their goals. I currently live with two border collies. Iggy is a 10-year-old. I have Iggy, who's a 10-year-old, and will be 11 in November. Hard to believe he's going to be 11. And Wiki, my baby, who is 8 months old. I also share my home with my husband and a 12-year-old son, just to keep it all exciting and interesting. As I go through this live, feel free to ask me questions. I will answer throughout the live, so just ask away. And if you are listening to the recording, let me know by using #replay in the comments section. And please feel free to ask anything as you watch the playback, as I will regularly check back and answer questions. Good morning, Julie. How are you? Oh, it was nice to have Mike be able to go take Sisu for a run. Hopefully they didn't get too wet. Does Sisu take a long time to dry, or does Poodle coat dry pretty quick? While we give people a few more minutes, let me tell you something I'm working on. Me and my team are working on an online course. My goal for this course is for you to not only be able to train your dog to the best version of themselves, but to teach you how to build that amazing relationship that a lot of people are searching for. I know I was when I had my first few dogs and don't know how to get it. So far, the name of the course is going to be From No Sit to Holy Sit. I call it this because I work with a lot of clients who want more. They don't know what more is, but they know they want more. They want that dog that can be chasing a squirrel and you say sit and the dog can sit. Yeah, you know that dog that can stop in mid-chase and put his butt on the ground? Isn't that incredible? And I think a lot of people don't truly believe they can have that. But you know what? Anybody can have it. You just have to know the steps to get there. They want that dog that listens, that understands, not the dog that you're battling with. You don't want to be frustrated. And honestly, if you're always frustrated, I promise you your dog's frustrated, which is making your job of training so much harder. Um, like I said, I've so been this person, and it's taking me over 20 years to figure out how to not battle my dog. And every dog I get better, and every dog presents new challenges. That's what's fun about dog training. It all starts with the ODR game. Observe, don't react. Name for what we want the dog to do, to calmly observe without reacting. If they can calmly observe, they're thinking. If they're thinking, they can hear you. If you've done a good job of training your cues. And how we have to stay calm. calm, observing without reacting to training, not becoming emotionally, oh, my dog's being a bad dog, or oh, what have I screwed up? Why is my dog doing this? But instead going, huh, my dog did this. Can I figure out why my dog did this? Was the dog worried? Was the dog stressed? Did the dog have a question? Was the dog just being silly? Because, yeah, sometimes, especially young dogs, are just silly. This is why I'll be spending the next few weeks teaching you guys the bits and pieces of the ODR game. I'm very excited to share this with you. This game has been 20 years in the making, so you can achieve more with your dog. Okay, some people have said hello. Mary, hello, how are you? Oh, the little lovely little Lucy. How is she doing? Debbie, watching from Toronto. Hello, Debbie. Thank you for joining us. Um, Okay, let's get started. Help. My puppy is a teenager. How to use the ODR game to help your adolescent dog thrive. I won't lie. Like the human teenagers, most adolescent dogs are a pain in the butt. I don't want to say they are testing the boundaries because that puts us into the wrong mindset. That more is like they're constantly pushing your buttons and seeing if you're reacting or how you will react. I That type of thinking makes us defensive, and instead of looking for solutions for whatever the dog is doing, we take it personally. Your dog does not stay up at night thinking of ways to make your life crazy, even though it may feel like that some days. He is just being a dog. He is just being his authentic self. So, for example, last night we were talking at class how a lot of the behaviors you see within agility are reflections of stress reactions from the dog. And what causes stress reaction from the dog is a huge list of possibilities. We were doing a jump grid, and the German short hair pointer did it like 3 times and then took a loop around the building. Jump grids are really hard. Jump grids, for those who don't know, it's a bunch of jumps in a straight line, and the dog has to figure out their body across those jumps, and it seems something easy but is actually a pile of work for the dog. And he just needed to blow off a few seconds of stress, and then he just took 2 loops, came back to his owner, was like, okay, I'm ready to go. That dog needed that. That was a stress reaction. If you spend that stress reaction fighting with them, then they're not going to come back as quickly. Now, if the dog does it every single turn, then we have to start dealing with it. But sometimes they just need a moment, just a moment. And I say that a lot. They just need a moment. Like sometimes we all need moments. Um, okay. So your dog is doing what feels good to them at the time, what they need to do. Even though physically their body has done most of their growing, mentally there's still a long way to go. Think of yourself at 20 years old and think of yourself much older. You're not the same person. Did you know your dog is not fully mature till they're about 4 years old? For example, my Akita's defense drive didn't kick in till he was about 3 years old, which is super late for an Akita, but um, I knew it kicked in when he started to bark at different things. Like all of a sudden, he started to bark when people came up the driveway, or he started to bark. We were walking on a trail in the forest, and people were walking towards us, and it wasn't a trail with people on it, so we usually walked on our own. And he ran out 50 feet and barked at them. He had never done that. All his life before that, he would run out and go, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" But this was his defense drive kicking in, and it didn't happen until he was about 3 years old. You usually see most changes, most behavior changes before the dogs are 2 years old. And the great bulk of them happen between 7 and 9 months as their hormones kick in and life just changes for them. Um, Guarding issues, usually 7 to 9 months. The first time my Akita guarded a rawhide was 8 months old. I went to, I don't know, pick it up because I needed to move him or something. And he was like, I'm going to growl at you. And I was like, no, you're not. And I picked it up and kept going. Not saying that is the best way to train it, depends on the dog. But with him, he needed to hear, yeah, that's not going to work. And we moved it along. The Get It game, which is stage 1 of the ODR game, is a great way to prevent guarding. The whole game is set up so that you're constantly messing around with what the dog has and doesn't have. So, and getting stuff back to you. There's a lot of handling near food and toys, all the things that make your dog comfortable when you're approaching is something of value. Um, a lot of guarding happens because the dog feels defensive. Either the dog sits and chews his bone and nobody ever bothers him, and he might be doing some tiny mild guarding and you don't even notice. You walk by and he kind of stiffens and looks, and you don't even notice. And for him, that was successful. So if you need to pick up the bone and move him for whatever reason, then he's like, I'm going to escalate that. And how we respond to that um, is how he's going to do the next time. The get it game, because you're constantly interacting with him, his toys, his bones, things he values, like I said, will help with guarding. Adolescence is when leash reactivity starts. Whether your dog is overexcited or fearful, it all looks the same. If you want to learn more, check out our previous Facebook Lives. I did a pile of Facebook Lives a few weeks ago on leash reactivity. Reactivity is all about self control. With my puppies, I reward everything they focus on. Never allow them to complete the behavior chain of focus, bark, lunge. Let me explain this a little more. And I talked about this a little bit in our previous Facebook Live on puppies. Most behaviors have a precursor. A precursor is something that happens before something else. A precursor to you starting your car is you getting into your car. Think of how your dog knows you're about to take them for a walk. With one of my border collies, he would get excited as soon as I went to the bathroom, which told me I go to the bathroom before going for a walk, which is true. It's what I do. Every stage of getting ready to go for a walk after that, like changing my shoes, putting my coat on, opening the door, just got him more excited because I was constantly reinforcing that excitement by moving to the next step. How I managed this was, and he was a super excited dog, and I've never had to take it to this extreme with any other of my dogs. But how I managed this with him was making sure he had a thoughtful behavior to perform before we did the next action. For example, he had to be lying down before the process started. That doesn't mean I told him to lie down, because when you give a cue, you are reinforcing the behavior that's happening. For example, your dog's running around the house like a crazy man, and you tell him to lie down, and he does, but you've paid attention to the running around the house. So you've got to be really careful in using cues to change behavior, because you're usually reinforcing what you're trying to get rid of. I would just wait him out. With sometimes it took a really long time, like he had a particularly excitable day, especially when he was young. So I'd put him in a crate for 20 minutes. That way I wasn't rewarding anything but lying calmly in his crate, and he was amazing in his crate and would lie down and settle immediately. So once he was calm, I would start the process. I would get up, go to the bathroom, and then he had to go sit on the bench at our back door. And he had to stay there while I put my shoes on, while I put my coat on, all those steps. He had to stay on the bench, which required self control the whole time. But I didn't have to nag. I could reward. Yeah, good boy. I put my shoe on. You stayed up there. Have a cookie. I did this. You stayed up there. Have a cookie. Eventually, the reward was me performing the next step and eventually getting to go for a walk. But teaching control through the whole thing helped him keep it together by the time I opened the door. How this works for the barky, lungy behavior chain is the anticipation of chasing a squirrel gets the dog excited. Now, when you see a squirrel, when we see the squirrel, our instant reaction is to pull back on leash. As soon as you pull back on leash, you're engaging the opposition reflex, and your dog will instantly pull forward. The other problem with pulling back on leash is you feel your dog's not chasing the squirrel, but in actual fact, your dog is still trying to chase the squirrel. You are physically stopping them. This actually makes it worse. In agility, when I'm trying to build drive, I pull the dog back before letting them go, because that anticipation is what builds drive to go forward. That's exactly what you're doing with the squirrel. Even if you never actually let them get to the squirrel, the fact that they spend the whole time going means they're getting more and more excited. So again, we're starting to build that behavior chain. Soon as you hold your dog back, the brain totally falls out of their head. In other words, the dog loses their mind. Again, because you are not stopping the dog, You are physically stopping the dog, but mentally you're not stopping the dog. The more you practice this, the more the dog becomes super excited when you tighten the leash, to the point where, and I've seen it happen, as soon as you tighten the leash, the dog instantly goes to full arousal and starts to bark, even when there's nothing in front of them. Don't worry, the ODR game will still work even if your dog's already at that barky, lungy stage. You just have to add distance to achieve success. As soon as you add distance to something, it makes the reward of that something less. I was working with a young Jack Russell Terrier, about 8 months old. His problem was birds that were on the ground or in the water. So birds standing still. He didn't seem to be really bothered by birds that were flying, just the ones that were not moving. We're pretty sure this started from focusing on the robins in the front yard. It was spring. He was about 4 or 5 months old. He would look at them, they would land, and then he would approach them and they'd take off. For a young dog, chasing birds would be piles of fun, because who doesn't like chase? What dog doesn't like to be chased or to chase? Look at a dog park. How do they play? They run around. Um, Eventually, he would get out, let out the front door, and would just be hunting down these birds to chase. Very quickly, things escalated. Now he is waiting for birds to land so the game begins. Being practiced every day, multiple times a day, building a huge reinforcement history, because he spends his time outside searching for birds, waiting to be rewarded. And that anticipation, which even if it gets rewarded only a few times, builds the behavior stronger and stronger and stronger. If you've ever heard of variable reinforcement, that is it. Now, chasing the birds in itself is not that big a deal. Dogs are going to chase stuff. I'm fine with that. I would prefer my dog not do it, but I also realize I can't manage my dog's entire life. Um, and they're going to go out in the yard, they're going to do stuff. But if your dog is going to do that, you need to start working on control on leash right from the beginning. For example, my dogs love to play soccer with my son. He loves to kick the ball around for them and they chase it. It's all good. But my dog also has to understand we can go watch my son play soccer on a team and you have to keep it together. So the first time we go play soccer game, the first time we go watch a soccer game, right from, depending on what age they are, the time of year, right from when they're young, we go. I may have to be far, far away, depending on the drive of the dog. And I'm holding their collar. We're doing get it game, holding their collar and rewarding, calmly watching the ball get kicked around. Maybe I might go out to a practice so I can, the ball's not quite moving as much and I can do a lot more rewarding. I would probably only do this for 10, 15 minutes if I already had a huge problem. But I'm always working on teaching them. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. That self-control, that understanding of it isn't always available just because you want it to be. So back to the birds. The behavior of chasing birds was regularly reinforced. The dog, when we started this, had no history of ODR game, so no understanding of self-control on leash. When he saw the birds on the ground, he lost his noodle. Would lunge, bark, and was unable to recover. His owner had to pick him up and walk away 20, 30, 40 feet before he was able to go, okay, I can breathe again. She started working ODR game away from the birds, helping her dog understand the concept of anytime there was birds around. So helping her dog understand the concept of the ODR game. When she did see birds around or was working on it and there was birds available, she held his collar and rewarded him for just looking at the birds. Remember, the get it game, which is the collar grab game, is the first step. The looking and not reacting, not thinking it's available until they're told it's available. The next step was, okay, now you can look at them while I hold the collar. Holding the collar is much easier for the dogs than holding the leash. I think touching them makes them stay in their heads better. It keeps them in their body. So now, once they can do the collar, you let go of the collar and hold the leash. Remember, the leash hand is anchored on your body. So now you're playing straight up ODR game. If the leash tightens, you take a step back. If the dog loses it, you turn around and walk away. If the dog can calmly watch whatever's in front of them, you reward. You're not asking them to turn around, you're just moving in front of the dog and putting a cookie in their mouth. If they can't take food, you're still going to try to reward, or you're going to move further away till they can food. With some dogs, I actually squish the treat into their mouth because the act of eating actually forces them to take their focus off what they're looking at and start to focus more on their body. Um, so very quickly, this dog was really well trained. He just didn't have ODR games. So very quickly he went, oh, I can do this. And as soon as that happened, he started looking back to his owner, and then she could ask for simple commands like sit or down or come. You have to do the step of asking for work, because eventually that is how they learn to ignore the birds. If you don't do the work, you're always still paying attention to the birds and rewarding the not paying attention or the paying attention. It's still all about the birds. Then eventually, then it becomes a proofing game. Can you perform this while there's birds around? Can you perform this while there's birds around? What ends up happening is the birds become irrelevant because they've learned to work through them. Okay, so let me know. Oh, wait, there's comments that I forgot to scroll. We have another Debbie, but this one's from Western Massachusetts. Hello, how is everything in Massachusetts? I love that word. Patty, good morning, Patty. Had difficult time finding you today. Oh, I wonder why. You'll have to tell me why, Patty, if there's anything I can do to make that easier. Okay, tell me, what makes your dog lose his noodle? What is it that you're having such a hard time? My super excited border collie spec that I was speaking about was definitely water. Um, Pretty sure I understand. I never went to the last step. I did the get it game, but I never went to the working right next to water. So water 50 feet away, no problem. But water 5 feet away, always when we went there, he ended up swimming. I should have gone and done that working near the water a lot to get that last step. And now I know that, and I can't wait to work on it for the next dog that's crazy about water. Maybe that'll be the little Miss Wicca. Okay, so another situation that comes up a lot with my clients is door manners. What your dog does when people come over. You get your puppy home, everyone comes over to see the new baby. Maybe with COVID, door manners are going to be a bit better because most of us didn't have a lot of people in the house. Okay, so they all come over and they make a huge fuss, and your puppy loves it, and everybody's happy. Little baby puppy comes over and says hello. Look at how friendly my puppy is. No harm, right? It's all good. The baby is just a cute little ball of fluff saying hello to all your company. You're so happy. Your dog is friendly. But now your puppy has grown up. Your company wants to say hello, but doesn't like the jumping, and you really don't like the barking. Um, how can we use the next step is using the ODR game to both manage unwanted behavior and start working towards it just not happening in the first place. Do this when there is someone else at home to greet the company and take their coats while you work with the dog. You cannot work with the dog and deal with your company. So if it's the type of company you can say, hey, come in, hang your coat up, I'm working the dog, that's great. But don't try to have, company where you have to be a little more formal and take their coats and the whole bit and try to work your dog. It will not work. Practicing ahead of time with family members is definitely the way to do it. So you're setting yourself up for success. You always, when training, want to set yourself up for success. So I usually start a little easier than my dog's best accomplishment. Going back a step, building a little value for that easy step. So when you go a little harder, they're like, oh, yeah, I remember it. Okay, so you start with your hand in the collar. Remember, it's the beginning is get it game. As with any training, you want to push some failure, but the dog losing his mind every time is just teaching him to lose his mind. That's why set yourself up for success. Have a family member ring the doorbell. You are standing with your dog's collar in your hand near the door. Funny story. We have a doorbell, but nobody ever uses it. And when the doorbell rings in my house, we all just look at each other and be like, what is that noise? For my dogs, the doorbell is the squeaking of the back door. if I ever oiled it, this problem would be gone. But it's the squeaking of the back door they hear, or the word hello, which if I say loudly enough, they'll bark. Um, because those are my doorbells in my house. So dogs don't come pre-programmed with doorbells. I've had some clients who I've suggested change your doorbell to a different sound and build a whole new behavior on the new doorbell. And that's worked really well. Okay, I'll pause here and I'll look at comments. Mary, Lucy chases the cat. Now I have to ask the question, do Lucy and the cat play together? So if it's you chase me, I chase you, then that's great. They're having a good time, but then you could work ODR game with the cat in the room and teach Lucy, can I call you off the cat? So again, this is one of those situations where I don't care if she chases the cat, but if I need her to stop, I need to be able to call her off. My dog has started barking at people. Okay, this is Debbie, comment from Debbie Martin. My dog has started barking at people when we were out on a walk. What to do to stop it? He is 6, but just started this recently. Okay, couple of questions, Debbie. 6 years old is a really weird age to start barking at people. So has anything happened that's made him a little more cautious? Has he always been a little worried of new people, or is he barking to say hello at people? Again, ODR game would still be the way I would do it. So as people are approaching you, I move up into somebody's driveway to give myself a little more breathing room. And as the people walk by, I would wait till my dog focused on them and reward them as people walked by. Once that's working, I would get closer and closer to the sidewalk. And then I would start working on maybe heel position as you walk by people, till eventually he can be like, oh, look, there's a person. How about we play heel? Mary, yes, they play sometimes. That's it. So you're not trying to stop Lucy from chasing the cat, but you need to be able to call her off the cat. So you could have the cat running around and just start with ODR game. Hold her Lucy's collar. When Lucy connects with the cat, reward. Lucy connects with the cat, reward. Go to the leash. Lucy connects with the cat, and by connects, I mean looks at the cat, focuses on the cat would be a better word, reward, and then reduce the rewards after about 3 to 5 times, and then wait to see, does Lucy look back up at you? Okay, now you can work recalls. That would be a good way to start working on, I get to call you off the cat. One of my dogs, I had a kitten. So it was really hard because the kitten was always moving and the dog had a really rough time. And of course, I'd be like, bah, don't go after the cat because the cat was this big. But the puppy was young. It was like 3 months old. It was one of the border collies. And as soon as I started being calm, and whenever he was playing with the cat, I was just scared he'd hurt the cat. It turned out fine. The cat and him were fine together. They loved each other, which usually happens with 2 babies. But I would walk up to them playing and reward both of them. This cat loved food. So I would just started every time they were playing, I would walk up and reward them. Walk up and reward them. Pretty soon, when I approached them and they were playing, they would both disengage from playing and look at me and be like, where's my cookie? And that's how I started being able to calmly call them off the cat. A lot of times with the chasing of the cat, it's the yelling that makes it worse. You've got to be like, okay, I can do this calmly. Um, the calm makes a big difference. Okay. Patty. Yes. Most people need to do it if they have cats. Okay. We're going back to the talk. Okay. So I told you about the doorbell at my house that is a weird noise. Okay. Back to the exercise. So step 2, repeat ringing the doorbell with hand and collar until the doorbell rings. The dog starts to turn his head towards you instead of focusing at the door. Repeat this for a few sessions until your dog is turning his head to you within a few repetitions. Now you are ready to try and hold the leash and play the ODR game. What happens when the doorbell rings? If your dog can't get it out of control within a few seconds, go back and play the doorbell game with the collar a few more times. If your dog barks once and then remembers he is playing with you and asks and turns around and looks at you, awesome, that's incredible. Ask for some simple behaviors like sit or come. Your dog is well on his way to handling the doorbell. Now it's time to up the ante. Back to hand and collar, ring the bell, and again, do this with a family member, ring the bell and have someone open the door. Your dog's going to 100% focus. If he starts barking uncontrollably, add some distance or remove your dog from the situation. If he can calmly look, go back to rewarding. Work on this stage until your dog can watch your family member come through the door and will start turning his head looking for the reward. Like with the doorbell, now you can try just holding the leash. How long does it take your dog to get under control? Remember to reward loose leash, even if looking at the door. In fact, that is the next step. You want to reward. Yes, go ahead, look at the door. Your dog is always going to look at the door. Like chasing the cat, I am not teaching him don't look at the door. I am teaching him look at the door and keep it together. Keep going with this game until your dog can voluntarily turn away from the person at the door and look at you. Now you can start asking for simple skills. Imagine your dog being able to come when called as your company walks through the door. This is how you get there. While working through these steps, I strongly suggest your dog not have access to the door or company as soon as they get there. Otherwise, the dog will learn when training, this is how I behave, and in real life, this is how I behave. When you're ready to try it with real, so before you try it with real, before you're ready to try it with real company, I suggest management. That means you can put him in the backyard, you can put him in a crate, something like that, so he doesn't have access for at least 15 minutes till he can be calm for about 5 minutes. Um, 5 minutes. I used to say be calm for a minute or two, but people were like, oh, he's quiet. I'm opening the door. No, 5 minutes of, oh, yeah, there's company here. I'm over it. Then you can let them in to access the company. So now you're ready to try it with real company. This will be hard the first time because they already have a history of losing their mind. This is why starting this with puppies is so much easier because you're not fighting the history of reinforcement with an adolescent dog. Start with your hand in the collar and have some super amazing rewards, hot dogs, meatballs, any meat-like product. When the doorbell rings, reward your dog. He doesn't have to do anything, just put a reward in his mouth. Remember, you spent some time adding value for that sound. If he refuses the reward, like earlier, like I said with the birds, move further away until he can take it. When a dog becomes super focused, he is either worried or excited. Picture a dog looking at a squirrel. Their brain is 100% focused, so they can't even think about the food. Taking food is actually a sign that a little piece of your dog's brain is coming back into their body. So the act of chewing is physical and requires the dog to focus on their body, which is what you want. Adding distance and using super high value rewards makes the chance of taking food more likely to happen. And as he starts to relax, then you go through the steps of collar, then leash, then eventually you try it off leash. Julie has a question. Cecil used to jump towards the neighbor's dog while we were walking. Since I've been having her look quietly, get treats, she now looks at the dog, is quieter, and looks for treats. She's still not calm, but much better. Awesome job. And way to start using ODR game in all her stuff. All ODR game is a game that's overall throughout life. I use it every single day, multiple times a day with my young dog. So she starts to understand, oh, to get this, I have to do this. I have to stay calm, being the biggest thing. With ODR game, you are always working for a loose leash. If your dog pulls towards the company, we're still working on the company, take a step away. Continue this moving further away, one step at a time, until your dog can calmly watch the company on a loose leash. That's what you reward. If your dog isn't able to control himself, and by control, I mean 4 paws on the ground and not making noise, sometimes the dogs are huge barking type of dogs, I will accept a slow squeal, like the slow leak. My son calls my dog a teapot. The because that is a huge improvement from them from barking. So I will reward that a few times, but eventually I won't accept that either. And then you can reward them the final ultimate by saying, go see. Go see is permission to go do whatever it is. Go see, go run. I use permissions all the time to reinforce my dog, especially my adult dogs who have these behaviors. I'm not constantly using food, but the permission to go see or go do or go run becomes the reward. Um, that was a lot of information I just threw at you. And does anyone have any questions? Um, Also, you are welcome to tell me about a situation and maybe I can come up with help on some solutions. Meanwhile, Patty has a comment. Great ideas for door behavior. Hope easier with my soon to arrive puppy. Was so difficult with the rescue adolescent burner. Yeah, burners are big. So, without a doubt, anything with a 100-pound plus dog is more challenging. What you want to do if your burner is still around is not allow your puppy to react to your burner's excitement. So make sure you put the burner in the backyard, in a crate, somewhere where you can practice this with your puppy, um, and not be influenced by the excitement of your burner, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, and if you start, honestly, door behaviors are easy. If you start at the beginning, right from the beginning, first of all, when people come over to see my puppy's in an X pen. So then I can wait till they're calm to open the door. Right away, teaching them calm. Oh, I'm so sorry, Patty. Um, so right away, teaching them calm before you get to see the company. Remember, my dog already has a history of coming out of the X pen calmly. So everything has steps. Everything has multiple phases. And if you start putting them all together, they work. So if my puppy can't calm down in the X pen when there's new people in the house, my puppy's not coming out of that X pen. Zig Ziglar said, don't let what you want now wreck what you want later. So my puppy coming out of the X pen when they're screaming and jumping is never going to happen because I know eventually I'm going to hate that behavior. Okay. Um, yeah. So Patty wrote, perfect starting out ideas, X pen and calm first. Might have to train the company. Without a doubt, that's why I started using the X pen because you cannot stop your company from picking up your puppy and letting the puppy jump. Doesn't matter what you say, they're like, oh, yeah, it's okay. And sometimes this is the same company who's then going to yell at your dog for jumping. Makes me crazy. With the X Pen, I find it's much easier to control the company. Don't touch the dog. He's in the X Pen. It's a black and white something you can supervise. And when the company's sitting down and the dog is calm, then you can let him out. Then you still have to decide how you want your puppy to greet and all that stuff. But at least that gives you that initial door behavior moment. Okay, here are just two examples of how I use the ODR game with my adolescent dogs or how I teach with my clients' dogs. Your dog having the understanding of the ODR game will make your dog not just easy to live with, but a dog that knows how to listen and what is expected from them. Even when dogs who are reactive, or you're starting to see the signs of reactivity, stuff like hard stares, starting to pull towards things, more than I'm assuming the dog who doesn't pull. But if your dog already pulls, dogs that pull hard on leash are well on their way to being reactive because it's just a little jump. Walking on a loose leash makes not reactivity so much easier because every step they're using their self-control. Starting to stiffen as you walk by things. You will start to see signs about 5 months. My puppy Wicca is 8 months old and she's totally hit the spooky weird age at the weirdest things. Not with people, but with noises and anything. And she's barking, you just touch her and she's like, oh yeah. It's like you got to snap them out of it. Their brain goes down that path. You want to get started on working on ODR game right away. Whether you have a puppy or an adolescent dog, work with what you have, start working through it. Think of it this way, the more you practice any behavior, the better they get at it. With the ODR game, they will learn to practice quietly watching dogs or people or whatever distractions walk by. Every time they get to rehearse that calmness, they will be that much better prepared to do it again. The root cause of the reactivity will not disappear. If your dog is fearful, This will help the fear, but it won't get rid of it. Your dog is fearful. Fearful dogs get better, but the fearfulness is always there. It's part of their core hardwiring. But by playing the ODR game, their ability to exhibit self-control will increase dramatically, making them better able to go, okay, that makes me uncomfortable. I can deal with that. As you and your dog start applying ODR game to life in general, self-control will become how the dog behaves all the time. Picture it, a dog that doesn't take off the minute the door is open, or if you drop the leash, which I do all the time, a dog that doesn't jump on you when you walk by with your dinner in your hand, a dog that doesn't lunge at the neighbors. That's what you're looking for. Okay, some comments I want to read before we finish up. Julie, there was a TV commercial with doorbells. Sisu would react to the TV. Then she got used to hearing it. She got over it all on her own. So the doorbell, she had a history of a doorbell because you have a doorbell at your house. But I'm sure the TV was similar, but not exactly the same. And she eventually learned that doorbell. This is the prime example um, of if you don't reward a behavior, it goes away. So she heard the doorbell, she got all excited, nothing happened. She heard the doorbell, she got all excited, nothing happened. You stayed sitting on the couch watching TV. Eventually, she's like, well, nothing's happening. There's no point getting excited. So that is a prime example of a cue, the doorbell, fading away because nothing ever reinforced it. And if you think of it, all behaviors are like that. Your dog is a reflection of what's being reinforced. If you're aware of what's reinforcing every behavior, you have the ability to change everything. Without a doubt, we're still dealing with personality where, like my border collie that was super excited when we go for a walk. I wasn't reinforcing it. I was super aware of it. But he was just constantly on edge waiting for something to happen. So that was hardwiring. There's always hardwiring and personality traits that you're dealing with, drives and sensitivities, which I talked about last Facebook Live. But just always remember your dog is not being bad, he's being a dog. And you can change almost everything. Carol, dogs are easier to train than people. Yes, especially when they're family members. So that's the hard part. People coming into your house are family members who may not listen to you. Yeah, without a doubt. Okay, my company's Canine Essentials and Shake-a-Paw Dog Training provide one-on-one support, not only in creating training plans for you, but helping you integrate them into your life. Each team is different. That's why our programs are all custom made to help you focus on what matters to you and to your dog and what you need to make your life with your dog amazing. Um, if you haven't, if you need help getting your puppy started off on the right foot, or having an adult dog who has some of these lunging, barking, pulling behaviors, message me or comment for more info on our online and offline programs to see if they make sense for you and your dog. The first chat is free. Oh, Patty, telling people no squealing. I had a client who bred English bulldogs and pugs, and I always said, you got to stop squealing. It's killing him because her dogs would get super crazy. But honestly, she brought an 8-week-old English bulldog to class one day and I squealed too. Yeah, the squealing, you know what? People squeal. Your puppy doesn't stay in that stage for long, but people squeal. It's really hard to work through. Um, Julie, haha, my doorbell just rang. Courier drop off. She barked out immediately, stopped on her own. I'm okay with one bark as long as it stops. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with one bark. Um, can you fix it? Sure. But you can't, it's too much work to fix everything. It's the dogs who bark 10 minutes later are still barking. That's when it becomes a problem. I'm working on my 10-year-old border collie barks probably for about 30 seconds to a minute when somebody drives down the driveway. But I'm working on Wiccan not barking. So every time he barks, she gets rewarded on her bed. And she's very quickly learning to look for cookies when he barks, instead of joining him in the barking. She's funny. She doesn't bark when he barks, but she'll bark at a noise outside where he doesn't bark at noises outside. They're so funny. Okay. Any last questions before I go? Remember, I'll be around for a little while answering questions and I do check back. Join us next week at Friday at 10 a.m. for the next installment of the ODR game. We're going to do a deep dive working through different scenarios I use it and different responses from the dog and how I deal with them. Have you started playing the ODR game yet? Have some questions next week. We'll have answers waiting for you. That's all for now. If you have any special topic requests, let me know. Have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all next Friday. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.